That's how we're going to do it. With another BBC Radio Cambridgeshire exclusive this morning, the number of kids admitted to one of the county's hospitals with drug-related problems has jumped by almost 60% in the last 4 years. Freedom of information requests to the county's hospitals and mental health trusts showed treatment of under-18s for drugs rose across the board in the county, but it was particularly bad at Peterborough's new hospital. Now, last year, a total of 145 children were treated for a drug-related illness there. Chris Harrison from Peterborough is 17 years old and started smoking cannabis at just 9 years of age.
What it was, when I was about 7 years old, I was in standing around with my older mates. My mates was like, yeah, I'm going to get a bit of weed, and I was like, what's that? And they would come back with it. Just went down the river, rolled up, and had a few splits. And that's how it started.
How did you get hold of it at that age?
Get my mates to get it for me. And when I grew up about 15, that's when I started getting it myself.
What effect did it have on you then, smoking drugs at such a young age?
Well, what it is, it can give you like paranoia and stuff like that. It can make you like proper scared when you're out at night on your own.
Do you think it has affected you?
Yeah, a lot. Earlier on, when I didn't have like a spliff myself, I was feeling a bit crazy because I needed something to like calm me down. My body's got used to it, so that's why. And nowadays, when I don't smoke weed for one day, it makes me go mental, really. That's why I can keep on taking it to keep myself calm and out.
Did your mum know that you...
Yeah, I told my mum that I smoked it. My mum did slap me for smoking it, but...
Has it affected your relationship with your parents?
Yeah. I get like angry, you know what I mean, so... It's hard, really. She kicked me out for smoking it as well, because she didn't want me smoking it while I was going in the house with my little brother, well, with my little sister and that.
If you could go back to being sort of 7 years old, would you do the same thing again?
No, not really. Wish I didn't start it. It mucks about with your head and everything. It mucks up with your education as well, weed does, because you don't concentrate on nothing. I went to school one morning, smoking weed and out, it just mucked up with my head, so I just went mental, started chucking tables and chairs at teachers, and from that, I had to go to a special school. So I didn't do no work, didn't listen to the teachers, just didn't want to know.
And did the doctors looking after you as a kid say that your behavioural problems were because of the drugs that you'd taken?
Yeah. They did tell me not to smoke it, but I just didn't listen.
So how bad is the sort of addiction or problem now?
I smoke about 50 quid's worth of weed a day. But I have to sell all my stuff to get a bit of weed. Anything what I've got was worth money. My phone, push back. That's how it is.
What happens when he's sold all his stuff, I think we can all guess. That was Chris Harrison from Peterborough speaking to our reporter Samantha Appleby. I mean, really amazing goings-on that we don't perhaps see underneath the belly of Cambridgeshire. Dick and Bevington is a consultant in child and adolescent psychiatry for Cases. They provide information, support and specialist treatment in Cambridgeshire for young people with drug problems. Good morning, Dick. It was quite alarming what he was saying, wasn't it?
Yes, it is. It's very alarming. I have to say, we don't provide treatment services in Peterborough, but the rest of Cambridgeshire. But the story that young man gives is really a superb description of how young people get caught in particularly in the cannabis trap.
How many Chris's are there?
The straight answer, we don't know. It's not something that young people tend to leap up and queue up to come and tell us about.
But the way he was talking was he knew the price of everything, and his mate did, and you know, it seems to me that there's this huge, you know, underclass almost of people who are living this twilight life.
There are very large numbers of young people who have contact with cannabis because cannabis is incredibly well penetrated in, if you like, inverted commas, the market. And mostly cannabis is, as he described beautifully, is not sold to young people by men in long coats at the end of dark streets. It's sold to them by older brothers or sisters or, you know, close friends. So it's a perfect example of pyramid marketing, if you like.
Yeah, and you deal obviously with children in Cambridgeshire, as you said, not in Peterborough where there's a particular problem. But he's a young man, and we've heard from other youngsters. Is it a problem that's getting younger and younger?
Well, actually, if you look at the the really big studies where they do ask children in complete confidence about what they're using and when they started. The picture's a little bit more complicated, but I'll try and explain it. Actually, overall, the use of drugs as a population is going down, or at least flattened, over the last few years, which is quite encouraging. I'm not saying it's great news because it's still quite high, but it's actually flattened and is going down a bit in children. And the average age that children start to use drugs is actually slightly older than it was. So that might let everyone off the hook and think, well, we're cracking this. In fact, it's not as simple as that, because those children that do start to use substances of a whole range, ranging from alcohol up to very hard Class A drugs, those ones who do start tend to be starting younger than ever, and when they do get into the world of substance use, they have available to them both strains of cannabis that are almost unrecognizable compared to the cannabis that was available perhaps when their parents were growing up, grown under lights with a very different mixture of ingredients in the leaf, if you like.
You talk about strength here, and kids don't know what they're doing to their brains.
Well, this is the other thing that's particularly changed over my career in psychiatry. When I started in psychiatry, I'm oversimplifying, but not much. We thought that a 13-year-old brain was basically an adult brain that needed a bit more teaching.
Right.
And what we've learnt in the last 20 years, because we've now got incredibly sophisticated scans that we can see which bits of the brain are lighting up when we ask it to do different jobs, we now understand that the most crucial bit of brain development, right at the front of the brain, we call that the frontal lobe, is happening through adolescence and up into the early 20s. So that we've got this giant experiment happening at the moment where young developing brains are being exposed to much stronger strains of cannabis and a much wider range of very much more powerful substances than has ever happened in the history of humanity.
And what's your best guess as to what's going to happen?
Well, I think probably you know the answer to that question. We don't know, but there are lots of indicators that particularly during this period of time, exposing the brain to lots of substances that effectively help it to rewire itself in a less helpful way, lead to problems with dealing with emotion, lead to problems with learning. There's just been a very important paper published from New Zealand which shows that if you follow people who started smoking cannabis under the age of 18, over about, I think it was 10 or 15 years, there is a significant drop in IQ compared to a population that are exactly the same but didn't smoke cannabis under the age of 18. So a loss of IQ, loss of capacity to manage emotions, and then more serious illnesses that we see a fair few of in Cambridgeshire, and it will be the same in Peterborough, which are the much more serious illnesses like psychosis, that in a vulnerable minority of young people, and they don't know they're vulnerable until they've got it because we don't have a genetic test, in a vulnerable minority, cannabis can trigger the beginning of an illness called psychosis, which people might hear of as schizophrenia, which are very serious and potentially lifelong and life-changing and devastating illnesses.
And they don't know they're doing it to themselves because they think they're invincible at that age, don't they? That's the problem. Well, what's the solution here, Dick? And very quickly, what can we do?
Well, we pick up children at the sort of, if you like, the most serious end, and we're aware that it's the tip of the iceberg. We're a treatment service in Cambridgeshire that we're really proud. We just won a national award for innovation, and the figures that have gone up in terms of treatment, we would make sense of with that. We're finally getting better at learning how to kind of engage young people in a way that they feel is useful and helpful and that they can actually access. But it's not just about getting better at treating. Our colleagues in the police continue to put pressure on the big guys, if you like, the dealers. People will have heard of cannabis houses, which are taken over to grow cannabis. Cutting things off at the suppliers, another approach. But it's also this is a society-wide phenomenon that we need to get more intelligent about the way we think about substances in general.
Dickon, we've got to leave it there, but I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for that. Dickon Bevington, a consultant in child and adolescent psychiatry for Cases, deals with kids in Cambridgeshire, outside of Peterborough. He's seeing very young children smoking cannabis on a regular basis, affecting their IQs, possibly in some cases leading to psychosis. The kids know not what they are doing. Later on, we speak to a counsellor specialising in counselling and therapeutic group work with kids and young people. And we've got the police on. Could they do more? Could parents do more? Could teachers do more? Or is it down to the kids? Who's to blame?